Hello, my friend.
Hi, see you.
Likewise. How was your day?
Very good. Good day today. What about you?
Fair, fair.
Well, your another hidden prediction came true, so
Well, we shouldn't let our listeners think that it's anything but luck when we have these predictions, and eventually the luck will turn bad. So I don't think they should follow us if they want to make money from our predictions, but we will provide a meal for a lifetime rather than a meal for a day. So some of the principles that we discuss are very important, and we'll carry them through all days rather than the next day. However, the movements during the day are pretty drastic. Like if you think that the market drift is 10% a year, a lot of times the movements during a day are from high to low, or 3 to 3.5% as they were today. And if you talk about the swings of more than 10 points or more, you sometimes get about 5% move. So what happens during the day is pretty important, although ephemeral. And I thought of one rule that we haven't mentioned, that aside from never shorting the stock market, you should never try to trade with a half hour or less window. You should never try to make a profit when you put on your trade. If you're going for like 2 points, then it doesn't make sense, because you're vig on the trade, and the front running from the high frequency traders, and your commissions will run you about 1 point. And if you're trying to take 2 points out, you're giving up about 50% of vig. In sports betting, the smarts, the bookies, make money when they allow you to choose any game, any special feature of the game, over, under, and halftime plus or minus. And they take 5.5% away from you, and they're extremely profitable. So how are you going? And in dice, they take 1 or 2% away, and if you play blackjack, they take 0.5% away, and you never can win in all those games. So how are you going to win if the house is taking 50%? So always have a big horizon when you trade. Don't try to trade for a half hour or an hour, or a point or two. And when you make your trades, think of what your exit is going to be. If possible, hold until the end of the day. Okay, sorry. Go ahead and continue.
right, that was exactly what my problem was today. So it's a perfectly timely advice. I exited my shorts too early. We had
So did I. I exited them around the 35 level. It became quite ambiguous to me. I could see us going past the Soji level of 50, which we did a few times.
right.
But then, as I said, it was anyone's game around the 30 level, which is about the opening. Then it went up to 50 and below 50. The high today was 80, 89, the low was 0.01, so they had a 88-point range on so they had about a 2.5% range.
Right. So like you were saying, we made new highs after hours last night and then sold off all the way through and tried to recover during the morning, but failed at the Soji level after testing it a few times. And then eventually we sold off 50 more points in the afternoon.
By the way, can I point out that yesterday it must have gone above and below the Soji level about 20 times. Was at 39.50, 39.52, then 39.48. When you looked at I look at the prices have a screen in my bedroom and make sleep a little more Pacific. I only look at the prices at 1 minute intervals. That's much too long for a real trader. But anyway, when you're sleeping, it's good not to have that thing flashing at every minute. Anyway, when I looked at the prices yesterday, it looked like it was always 39.50. It was like it hadn't changed because it had gone up and above it so many times. Then, of course, they tried the complete duplicity of forcing it down to the 39.30 level. You had to have immense courage to hold it when they announced the open market committee meeting. And so why do you think it went down today?
Why? Perhaps because the news weren't as woke as
I was going to say that. Yes, exactly. That's always the reason. But what was not woke today?
Well, one thing that I saw is that the immigration crisis on the border keeps getting worse, and the reporters are even pressing Biden administration and Psaki during her press conferences to let them know why the most transparent administration is being totally non-transparent, and they don't allow reporters to any facilities or to ride along with the patrol cars on the border. And so even CNN, after losing 50% of the viewership in prime time, is now had a headline that Biden was wrong on 3 statistics in ABC interview. So it looks like the press is finally beginning to start asking administration tough questions instead of just being very subservient. And also de Blasio is saying that Cuomo wants to reopen New York City for political reasons, but we shouldn't reopen because it's still too dangerous. And more women came forward. Well, one more woman came forward.
Well, I didn't even see that. What happened?
Maybe you didn't see it because it's a little out there. So the story is she apparently covered him when he was New York Attorney General in 2007 to 2010. And she said that he appeared to take interest in me, and the way he showed it by, and I quote, made unwavering eye contact. He was actually staring at the point.
The Bloomberg reporter. Yes, I saw. Has that ever happened to you? Has anyone ever made eye contact with you when you thought that it was inappropriate?
She was 25. When I was 25, I was very uncomfortable with eye contact to males or females, of people I didn't really know, especially people who are above you in a power infrastructure, your boss or whatever. You know, when you're young, at least I was, and a lot more intimidated by people who were older and more knowledgeable. So
is that a particular problem in Russia? When someone makes eye contact with you, might they be trying to grift you in a shady deal?
No, this is silly. I think this is just absurd because I mean, it's I don't even know what to say. This is silly. And at the same time, the irony of this whole thing is that women claim that we're all equal and we're all the same. And Yet, where are all the men? Why aren't men coming out of the shadows and claim sexual harassment? I'm sure there are plenty of men, just as many as women, being sexually harassed. So I call on all of them to come out and start accusing women of sexual harassment. We're all equal after all, so there should be equality on that front as well.
Well, from a man's standpoint, sometimes the men like the harassment.
Well, true,
And
and women do like
my
that.
wife, my
And
wife has been she was very kind. She was
right.
as, the one smart thing that Kenneth Galbraith ever said is that he harassed his assistant, and then he was married to her for 50 years.
Exactly.
My assistant was very good at her job, and I've only been married to her for 45 years.
Wow. You know, I'm just wondering how happy is Bill Clinton right now that he's out of the spotlight, because his eye contact was one of his signatures. He used to give like eye contact to everybody, and that's used to be considered part of your charisma, your charm. Now it's sexual harassment. So, you know, don't come close to women. Don't look at them. God forbid they get scared. It's just no winning.
Well, don't you think that these women had a proper grievance against Cuomo?
I don't know about all others, but certainly not this one with a eye stare. It's just simply absurd. If you're so uncomfortable with eye staring, you shouldn't be a journalist.
Oh, he was doing a lot more than that.
Well, no, with this one apparently it was just an eye stare. And she said that she felt uncomfortable with a number of men staring at her. You know, if a woman is hot, a number of men are going to stare at you.
Okay, well, go on. What else was woke today?
Well, our favorite doctor said that there is an emergence of new virus types, and so we should still continue wearing masks even after vaccination, because it's the new viruses could be contagious, and people could have multiple COVID illnesses even though they're vaccinated, because the new virus is different. So basically,
He met his match with Dr. Rand Paul today.
right, exactly. That's when he was saying that. So there is no end game. So, you know, be scared because the virus is ever mutating, and you should wear masks all the time because the government knows better.
I have something on that score for us today. Something very good.
And also, I'm sure you've noticed oil was down 8% today. Apparently on European demand fears, whatever they are, they have just realized that today, because there's a third wave of COVID coming, and now France is yet another country joining a new series of lockdowns. And of course, as you know, bonds made new low.
The yield on the 10-year rate is about 2.5% now. So it's keeps going up. And Mr. Actuator has been very adamant in his bearishness, and he has kindly agreed to be interviewed by us. Shortly, he's very bearish on bonds, and because he's bearish on bonds, he's been very bearish on stocks, and he had his day today. It was a nice red day. Some people will be interested in my guess for tomorrow.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. My guess is that there will be a strong up opening. After that, it's anyone's game. But overnight should be very woke.
If your prediction comes true tomorrow, given how many in a row, we're going to open a SPAC company now with a blank check. Everybody's doing this, so we should start too.
Well, again, I want to concentrate on meals for a lifetime. And today I had some back and forth concerning how gullible I am, and which is very bad trait to be a market trader when you're gullible. I talked about a person who came in for an interview, and he's very famous. He has 220,000 followers, and he maybe we'll interview him someday if he ever has the time. And he came into me with the perfect story. He says, you know, he was once worth, this is 1999, and it's right before the it was in the height of the internet crazy frenzy, and he had once had an internet company that had $1 billion market value, and it had dropped to about zero. And he admitted to me that, you know, I didn't even know what cloud computing was. I didn't even know what remote computing was like. And but anyway, he came into my office for an interview, and he said, you know, I've collected a file that no one else has collected. It was very laborious. It was American Stock Exchange convertible preferred stocks. I said, well, how many are there? And he said, oh, 22, 32, but he followed their prices every day, and he had come up with a system based upon arbitraging the convertible bond prices on the American Stock Exchange with the actual individual stocks. And it sounded very good to me, and I hired him. And he was a very good chess player. And it reminded me of a conversation that Gilbert and Sullivan had. When Gilbert met Sullivan, he said, Sullivan, will you please tell me the difference between a 9/8 time and a 7/8 time in terms of the rhythm and what it means in terms of the content? And so I said, let me think about it. And Gilbert said, you know, 25 years later, we've written 15 shows together. And he says, he still hasn't answered that question. And the person who came in for an interview still, after 25 years, he still hasn't shown me the file or the use of it. I mentioned that I'm very gullible. My father was very gullible. He's very generous and expansive, very much so for a policeman whose salary was $5,000 a year. And in Brighton Beach in those days, gypsies focused on it, and they came up with all sorts of what they call short cons. And one of their short cons was they'd fix your roof if it was leaking, and they do it for a reasonable price. But then 1 or 2 days later, the tar that they put on it would vanish and it would disappear, and that was their short con. I've been victimized by so many long cons and short cons that it's horrible to think about it. And I thought that would be very interesting about the relation of progressive handouts, buying votes and giving money for those who don't work, and I mentioned that I had a solution for it. Everybody should wear masks starting at birth and never get out of bed. But anyway, let me set the stage and introduce our listeners to the best Western of all time. It's called The Time It Never Rained by Elmer Kelton. And he was voted the best Western writer of all time. It's not just me who thinks that. And let me set the stage. He was a very cantankerous and independent cattleman. He eventually had to offset his losses in cattle with sheep and goats. Most of the cattlemen didn't make money on their cattle. They originally hated sheep. They smelled, made the grass unedible for the cattle, but eventually they all went into sheep. Anyway, Charlie had just saved some immigrants who had illegally crossed the border. They had no food, and the cattlemen knew that they couldn't aid the immigrants, the illegal immigrants, but they could give them food. Anyway, he just gave some illegal immigrants some food, and his next door neighbor, his name is Page Maudlin, comes by, and Page is a big operator. He has thousands of acres in every little county. He's the major bank depositor, and he's always busy. And anyway, he meets Charlie, and they have this conversation.
If you'd swallow that hard-headed pride and go to the PMA office, the government would pay half
Alexa,
the cost of a welfare.
Alexa, back 2 minutes.
I'll spend my own money if I spend any at all. Damned if I understand you, Charlie. Everybody takes money one way or the other, directly or otherwise. The railroads get it, and the airlines, and the school teachers. Half the people that go around talking about independence and free enterprise have got their own pipeline to the government money. They each got a different name for it is all. Them livestock of yours, they won't give a damn whether you pay for a well with your money or Uncle Sam's. The water will taste the same. Charlie squeezed the tin cup so hard he bent it a little. Anything I've ever done on this ranch, I've done because I thought it was worth something to me. If it's worth building, I'll do it myself. If it's not worth enough for me to spend my own money on it, it's not right to expect somebody else to do it. Maybe some New York ribbon clerk that's having a hard enough time feeding his own. That ribbon clerk has got his. He's got a minimum wage and unemployment pay if his job gives out. That's something me and you ain't got. His kids get cheap lunches in school because the government gives food away. He rides to work on a subsidized bus or in a subway that don't charge him what it really costs to run. If he's bought him a house, he's probably got a government loan at interest a lot cheaper than me and you can get. We ain't paupers, Charlie. That ain't the point. Most of the people who get government money ain't paupers. It ain't given to us because we need it. It's given to us because somebody needs us. They need our vote. So everybody's getting it, and you're paying your tax money for it. Only way you'll ever get any of that back is to claim what's coming to you. If you don't, somebody else will. Stubbornly, Charlie said, that ain't the way I was brought up, or you either. We was taught that every man starts with an even chance. We was taught to believe in a man rustling for himself as long as he's able. If you get to depending on the government, that day will come when the damn federales will dictate everything you do. Some desk clerk in Washington will decide where you live and where you work and what color toilet paper you wipe yourself with. And you'll be scared to say anything because they might cut you off with a tit.
Again, I would recommend that book, The Time It Never Rained. The author was a sheep and goat reporter for Sheep and Goat magazine for 10 years. He knows everything about cattle. He knows his subject as well as any author has ever known his subject. He reminds me of Patrick O'Brien. In any case, I think we should end with the proverb of the day. Let's see what Tom has for us. A good player sees the handwriting on the wall before there is any handwriting on the wall. Did you think it was going to break the 3,900 level? It got to 0.5. Then it came back. So what usually happens on the triple witching hour? Well, of the last 9 or so, 8 of them had a nice big open. And perhaps we'll have that gentleman who applied for a job with me and now he's very famous.
Do we know
He's-
the names? Jay, is that,
Well, he's very litigious, so I want to make. I think he'd be very proud of the fact that he was able to fool me like that. He's fooled many people, but he's as I've fallen down the stairs, he's climbed up the stairs, and he was kind enough to write an article about the 10 lessons that he learned from me, and he's interviewed my brother, and there's a whole chain of interesting interviews that were created by that goes on to Josh Waitzkin and Adam Robinson, that Tim Ferriss did, and it's a long story, but maybe if he's still proud of the fact that he was able to fool me so easily, then I'll tell the whole story, as well as the other times that I've been victimized by big cons, especially in selling my books, which really hurts because my father, as you know, even though he had a very small salary, he had more books in his library than mine, and I have about 50,000 books. My whole house is a library. And the reason that we had so many books is that Grosset and Dunlap and Simon and Schuster had their publishing houses. Of course, no one has a factory or a big producing establishment in New York now. I think something like 25 years ago, 400 of the Fortune 500 had their headquarters in New York, and now it's like two are down. But anyway, the big publishing houses had their warehouses and their printing establishments in New York, and my father was a policeman there, and they would hire the policemen to dump all their excess books. In those days, they didn't have remainders. And so all the policemen would make something like $2 an hour to dump the books in the Hudson River. And my father would save the publishers. Instead of dumping them, he would put them in our library. And there were more books in our house than I have right now. And I have a very big library that has been written up in many books as a remarkable libraries of. I'm right next to Getty's library and Rockefeller's library and the books. In any case, there was a big con played on me in selling my books. And it's similar to some of the big cons that happen in the stock market. Maybe I'll tell it next time. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Sennett. Thanks for inspiring all these good and terrible memories.
Thank you, Victor. Yes, we'll definitely like to hear the con stories. I like those.
Yeah, a big con, big con. I'm an extra. I have a library that has about 150 books on big cons, and I've fallen into almost every one of them. Okay,
Okay.
see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Good night.